The story of a Shaolin monk who travels around in the American Old West armed only with his spiritual training and his martial arts skills was a TV series that first aired in 1972. That series was called Kung Fu, and it starred David Carradine as the monk Kaiwei Chang Caine. This show is just packed with sayings from Chinese philosophy. It's actually based directly from Tao Te Ching and his book of ancient Taoist philosophy. Kung Fu aired on ABC for 3 seasons and finally went off the air in 1975. After being framed for murder, David Carradine, playing the main character, travels around the American Wild West. He gets caught up in a number of disputes which force him to rely strictly on his martial arts skills that he learned in his training at the temple. Now, this show was a real unique addition to the primetime television lineup that was going on during that time, especially since its character was a Chinese American. All this, combined with the fact that it involved martial arts, caused it to grab the attention of Bruce Lee, who actually auditioned for the lead role. He was under very serious consideration for this role, but in the end, Warner Brothers executives chose to go with David Carradine instead. Despite at that point that in Carradine's career he had no knowledge of Kung Fu, nor was he trained in any form of the martial arts. Tom Cunn, who was head of Warner Brothers Television at the time, defended the decision to cast Carradine over Lee, and the reason he gave was that he had trouble understanding him. He had trouble with his accent. He felt that if he had trouble understanding him, he thought that the TV audiences would have the same problem. Most people feel that it wasn't that at all. Most critics of Warner Brothers felt like it was a racial thing, that they just didn't think it was time for a Chinese actor to have a lead in a primetime series. Who knows what the answer is at this stage in the game? Nobody knows but Warner Brothers, and they're never going to tell. The other argument they used at not hiring Lee was that he normally played real aggressive characters, and that is true. And they thought that he didn't possess the serenity needed to be a peaceful monk like Caine was portrayed. Unfortunately, Lee getting passed over for this starring role in Kung Fu added to the problems that he faced as a Chinese man looking for big parts in Hollywood movies. He had previously pitched himself for TV shows to networks that were similar to Kung Fu, and he was immediately turned down. Enter the Dragon was the only American-made movie where Lee played the main character. He was continually frustrated by this, but at the same time, he said he actually understood the American studio dilemma, pointing out that he would have the same hesitation about casting a white lead in a Hong Kong production. And that's so true when you think about it. The character name of Cain is a biblical reference to Cain from Genesis, the brother who kills Abel and is made to wander the world afterwards. The mark of Cain is a protection to warn all of those who see it not to kill Cain. For the show's Cain, it might be the wanted posters from which the people know that he is wanted for murder. More likely, the mark of Cain is also the brands on his arms, which reflect his monk's training, which is his form of protection. It's pretty interesting that the set that they used for the temple was originally a set used for Camelot in 1967. That was inexpensively and effectively converted for the Chinese setting, and nobody knew the difference. Now, it's been said that John Saxon was offered the role of Cain, but he was unable to do it for some reason or another. I don't know if he had a commitment to something else. I think it was probably that he was committed to one of the movies that he was doing. But instead, he appeared briefly in Season 1, Episode 1, King of the Mountain. In several of the episodes, a younger Cain was played by Keith Carradine. This is David Carradine's younger brother. Their older brother, Robert Carradine, and their father, John Carradine, also appeared in episodes. This was truly a family affair. The special effects in this TV series were pretty good too. The series used slow motion effects for the action sequences, which Warner Brothers had previously utilized in 1969 with Sam Peckinpah's film The Wild Bunch. They also started utilizing this action sequence for the science fiction series The $6 Million Man. In the pilot for the series, Kane's beloved mentor and elder, Master Po, is murdered by the Emperor's nephew. He becomes outraged at this and he retaliates by killing the nephew. This caused there to be a price on his head, so he flees China to the western United States, where he seeks to find his family roots and ultimately his half-brother, Danny Kane. Now, although it's his intention to go without notice, Kane's training and his sense of social responsibility repeatedly force him out into the open to fight for justice or protect the underdog. He was always helping the downtrodden. After each one of these encounters, he has to move on to another location to avoid capture and also to prevent harm from coming to those he had just helped. While he's searching for his family, he meets a preacher, played by his real-life father, John Carradine. He also meets his mute sidekick, Sonny Jim, played by his real-life brother, Robert Carradine. They use flashbacks continually to often recall specific lessons from Kane's childhood and his training at the monastery from his teachers like the blind Master Po. In these flashbacks, Master Po calls his young student Grasshopper, and this name came from a playful lesson he taught to Kane as a child about being aware of the world around him, including the grasshopper that was at his feet at that moment. Now, this show had tons of special guests in the episodes that went on to be big stars. People like Harrison Ford, Leslie Nielsen, Barbara Hershey, Eddie Albert, Jodie Foster, Merlin Olsen, and Slim Pickens were all included in various episodes. The show was created by Ed Spielman, and it was directed and produced by Jerry Thorpe. Herman Miller developed the concept, and he was also a writer and producer of the series. Now, this TV show has a wide range of viewers, not only people that are my age that watched it when they were growing up, but also a much younger class of people were fans too. You see it mentioned in the popular movie Office Space from the 1990s, where it's mentioned in the film that Peter Gibbons, all he wants to do to start a relationship with a girl is go to his house and watch Kung Fu episodes. That was his mark on a way to decide whether a new date was girlfriend material or not. Also, Quentin Tarantino is a big fan of this, and you see it pop up in Pulp Fiction and in his other movies. In January 1974, the edition of Mad Magazine did a series spoof that parodied the series as Kung Fool. And also the British comedy series The Goodies had an episode in it called Kung Fu Capers, which was another parody on the American series Kung Fu. Now, a lot of people think that this series went off the air because it waned in popularity, and that wasn't the case at all. This series was still going gangbusters after 3 years. The only reason that the show went off the air was because David Carradine quit the series. He had had numerous injuries that had plagued him throughout the 3 seasons, and he just felt like he couldn't go on. He was banged up enough. The show had excellent ratings and probably is one of those shows that would have continued for 6 or 7 years. It was a popular show. It was a water cooler show. Everybody talked about it on Monday mornings or the day after at the water cooler. But he finally decided that he had been beat up enough and that his body just couldn't handle the continued abuse that was happening during the show. Go back and take a look at it. This is an excellent show. It's fun to watch. You get into it, and it's kind of one of those series that you have trouble turning off. Take a look at it. I believe you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.